evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of What's Happening. My name is George Binns, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Elliot Margolis and Gail Burke. And we're doing another one of these, 5 minus 2, because we still haven't found any progressives who are willing to join us. We're getting lonesome up here. And a lot of people tend to think that we're sort of like a Fox News Light, but we're really not. We're just fair and balanced. And to talk about something fair and balanced, I thought we'd start with the election that's coming up. And I've seen some different references. The ones I like are John Malden, George Friedman, and Douglas Schoen. And I'm coming to the conclusion that the Democrats are in a position where the pain in their foot is caused by the smoking gun in their hand. They have missed out on something in the transition since even the Nixon administration, where they have given up on the working class, middle class, upper middle class, lower middle class, and they have focused on minorities, the environmentalists, and regulations, and they have lost their base. So I think they're having a tough time finding out what their real message is and who's willing to listen to them.
I'm not sure I agree with you, George. They're trying to broaden their base, not only with the minority, well, with all minority communities, because they're giving away the shop. Anybody that they think is incapable of helping themselves, they want to help. They want to give them education, give them food, give them shelter, give them a cell phone, give them a flat screen TV, so that they'll vote for them, so they know who their base is. And
let me say it again.
okay.
They used to have a base of the working man. That was their mantra, if you
The blue
will.
collar in the middle
Right,
class.
it used to be, correct.
It used to be.
Right.
And back in those days, it was a tax policy where you would tax the few for the benefit of the many. Once you start on this kind of a program where you're going to have all sorts of support, really big, fine meshed safety net, now you're starting to tax the middle class to pay for it. And all of a sudden, they recognize that the Democrats are not our people anymore. They're not working for us. They're working for them over there. So they're in a divisive mode of separating the country into us versus them kind of approach. And they're trying to broaden their base. I understand that. But in the process of broadening, they lost a significant portion of their base. It used to be called the Southern Strategy. And it's worked very, very well for the Republicans ever since. Since Nixon, the South has almost voted entirely for whatever the Republican president is. Obama got a few states, Clinton got a few states, but they didn't sweep the South like the Republicans did with Nixon and Reagan and Bush, 1 and 2. Totally lost it.
Well, tonight's primary is going to be interesting to see what happens with Hillary versus Bernie, especially in the South, like Florida.
Yeah.
And Hillary is not drawing the crowds the way Bernie is. So Bernie Sanders has tapped into something the way Donald Trump has.
Yeah.
And the people are coming out to their rallies and, they're showing up at the polls.
Well, that's another thing that I think it's somewhat of a misnomer. Florida really isn't a southern state. It's a suburb of New York.
Well,
Agreed.
that's true with all the
So Bernie
snowbirds. Yeah,
fits in
yeah.
very nicely
yes, he
with
does. Yeah,
that particular ethnic group.
yeah.
And I think he's going to do very well there. The polls look like Marco Rubio is going to take a drubbing in his home state.
Yeah. Well, maybe
Well,
then he'll drop out.
He
Which
said
is-
no.
he
He
said-
said no. But
He's
what's
going nowhere.
I mean, it looks like Hillary's going to take Florida and North Carolina. It also looks like Sanders is going to give her a lot of trouble in the Midwest. Midwest is working people,
Yeah.
and that's where Hillary is hurting the most. But
Well, don't
The what-
forget Illinois. Now,
that's the Midwest.
okay, now, originally Hillary is from Illinois, right?
Right.
Does she really have a home state now? I don't think she does.
Chappaquiddick.
But,
New York?
Chappaqua,
You know,
that's
Yeah,
the wrong one,
Chappaqua.
yeah, but,
That's another story for
Uh-oh,
another night.
slip of the tongue, yes.
but the thing is, you've got, what people don't, or not people, what the politicians are incapable of understanding is that 70% of the Republican vote is going to either Trump or Cruz, both of whom are non-establishment type people.
Outsiders.
And then you look at Bernie Sanders, another non-establishment type person, and people are voting for him in significant numbers. Why is it that the politicians can't understand on either side? They can't understand what's happening.
They don't want to believe it.
And the Republicans could self-destruct. This is clearly an opportunity for them to win an election after 8 years of Obama's foolishness. So the Republicans have an opportunity, and they're fighting amongst themselves.
Well, they don't want to believe it. That's their
Yeah,
problem. They're
yeah.
not willing to accept the fact. The best analysis I've heard recently was Mike Huckabee was on Fox one afternoon, I guess it was, Sunday afternoon. And he was talking about this is not a left versus right election, because the left has gone way over there and the right is way over there. And most of the people who are in the middle are left out of this. And along comes Trump and Cruz to some extent, and they're talking vertically. They're talking to the people who are the working people in this country who don't see anybody representing them or talking their language. There was another good analysis that if you listen to the vocabulary that Trump is using, everybody says bigot, it's crude, it's rude, and all that kind of stuff. But he's talking to the working class who tend to talk that way anyway.
He's talking their language.
Exactly.
And what he's not doing is he's not talking down to them like regular politicians do.
Yeah.
And that's what's appealing.
As far as the left and the right, they don't want to give up the power that they've been wielding all these years. And that's why they're so much against, particularly against Trump. And I believe that they know that he can beat Hillary.
Yeah.
And that's a no-no. They don't want Bernie, but Hillary is losing it. She's losing it.
Well, you know what Hillary said today?
Yeah, tell us.
Pray tell, what did Hillary say today?
Hillary was talking about Libya.
Yeah.
And you know, she said that none of our people have been killed in Libya.
Oh, okay. Well, they're
None
not
of them.
her people.
You know, so the SEALs that died
Yeah.
in Benghazi, the ambassador that died in Benghazi, they're not our people.
Yep.
Not according to Hillary.
Well, they're not her people.
But one of her quote unquote advisors said that, you know, that's not what she meant. What she meant was none of our allies' people had died in Libya. And what she said was in no way as bad as the things that Trump has said. And yet I look at what Trump has said. He never said, don't let the Muslims in. He said, wait till they're vetted. He didn't say, don't let the Mexicans in. He said, wait till they're vetted. But the media just jumps on, don't let the Muslims in and don't let the Mexicans in. They don't finish the sentence because they don't like Trump. And what the media is doing is electing Trump. They're so stupid.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well, another gaffe that Hillary made the other day, she said that she's going to bring clean, renewable energy as the key into the coal country. We're going to put a lot of coal miners and coal companies out of business.
But you
well,
remember,
this is the problem
This
the
is
country
what
is
they.
facing.
Well,
No,
this is how she thinks.
oh, I know it. But this is the problem the country is facing. This recovery that we've had since 2008 is going nowhere. The jobs are not there. This is the longest recovery we've had without a significant change in the employment. And as a result, the people who used to work for a living, you know, if they can get a job at all, it's down 2 or 3 levels from the pay they used to
Or
accumulate.
it's part-time.
Yeah,
But Obama and the liberals are going to tell you the unemployment rate is 5%.
That's a lie. That's a bold-faced lie.
Well, I mean, it may be 5% of those looking for a job, but when you consider the fact that so many people have looked for a job, couldn't find one, and dropped out of the workforce,
And they're not counted anymore.
they're not counted. What is it? Since the 70s, so that's 45 odd years, give or take a year. We've got less people working per capita than ever.
well, and the interesting thing about it is, there's a group, bunch called FRED, Federal Economic Recovery Data. And you look at that data, and that's what the government is using. And they have a table that, or a chart they publish that shows the unemployment rate at 4.9%. Then you go in and you look at the U6 rate, where they don't take out the people who are not looking for a work anymore, and it's up around 11 or 12%. And you go into the chart that you're talking about of percent of working age people who are actually working, and it's down in the 61, 62%. And like you said, it's the worst it's been in 45, 50 years. And yet, this data is available on government websites, and the liberal media, well, we ignore that.
They
We
don't
don't
pay
like that
attention.
story.
They don't want to be bothered because it doesn't fit into the agenda
Yeah.
of the left, and that's what the media is.
Yeah.
Now, I think also that the media is creating multiple problems, particularly for the front runner, Donald Trump. Look what happened in Chicago at
Oh,
the
yeah.
rally that he
Yeah.
was supposed to have.
That was all Trump's fault.
Yeah,
All Trump's fault.
That's right.
You ask the
He's got to
media,
be
and
responsible.
it's all Trump's fault. But when Rubio had a problem in one of his rallies, nobody covered it. Nobody's covered any of the problems
No.
at Sanders rallies, and there's been some.
Yep.
But for Trump, they cover it. And you know what? They're helping to elect Trump
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Well, the police even said that there was a lot that went on that the cameras were not recording because a lot of the people that were there protesting, some of them were from Bernie Sanders, but a lot of them were from George Soros, MoveOn.org,
Right.
and deliberately sent there to stir up trouble.
Right.
Sounds like
Exactly.
Ferguson all over again.
Yes, and then
And I wonder
they're
if they're
saying that Trump is responsible. Well, it happened in Ferguson too, and the Reverend Al and Jesse Jackson were out there stirring up trouble. Nobody ever blamed them.
The thing I was going to get to on Ferguson, I wonder if they're going to complain and have a strike later on because they didn't get paid. You know,
That
this,
would be perfect.
I mean, this stuff is out there, and I'm surprised that nobody is picking up on it. There was another article yesterday or today that at one of the rallies, they were going to arrest Trump for inciting a riot.
Oh, yeah.
And the governor said, now, wait a minute, guys, we haven't got any evidence to prove that.
Yep.
And they drop it. But the headline hit the Wall Street Journal, it hit New York Times.
Well, Elizabeth Warren is out there saying that something has to be done. He's to be held responsible for what happened.
Well, why isn't she responsible for lying? Why isn't Hillary
'Cause she's a
responsible
liberal.
for lying?
Yeah.
There's a Facebook cycle going around where Elizabeth Warren is talking about how to fix the banks. And I got into it with a couple of people on it. One guy came back at me and essentially, she's paid $400,000 a year for one course, and she's trying to explain why the students are having such a terrible problem paying off their loans. What's the cause of these loans? But it's
People
not
like
me.
her.
It's not my $400,000.
Well, it's like when Hillary goes out and makes $250,000 when she gives a speech at a college. And then she's telling these students that, you know, it's terrible that you have all these student loans. We have to do something about it. We have to do something. She's part of the cause.
Well, the thing is with Hillary too and the Clinton Foundation,
Yes.
because allegedly the money goes to the Clinton Foundation. When you don't, people were commenting about Wounded Warrior, and the executive director of Wounded Warrior was fired because too much money was going where it wasn't supposed to go. Not to the, I mean, it just,
It's
you know,
overhead.
right. The overhead on the Clinton Foundation is 90%.
Yeah,
So $9 out of 10 that you donate to the Clinton Foundation goes to the Clintons.
yeah.
It doesn't go to any foundation, doesn't help anybody, but that's okay because it's the Clintons.
Well, this is the fundamental problem that the tax structure is really biased towards those who can contribute to the Congress that passes the law.
Yeah.
And the same people that are complaining, oh, the inequality is horrible in this country. 1% owns, so much percent of the wealth in the country.
Which has gone up under Obama, by the way.
Yeah. Well, how did it get that way? I mean, the people that are running for office are the ones that made the problem, but
Right.
they're saying, oh, we got to fix it. And they get to the point where people are, oh, yeah, they're saying that again. And this is why I think a Trump, a Cruz, a Bernie Sanders is starting to get a lot of traction is because they're not business as usual.
That's right. Yeah.
Let me show you something else that you were talking about Facebook. See if somebody can zoom in on this. This is a picture of Sarah Palin, and she's wrapped herself in an American flag and has a cross. And this is, what it says is the 14 characteristics of fascism. So they're comparing Sarah Palin wearing a flag, having a cross, to fascism.
Yeah.
This is the liberal media. This is what the liberals do to try and discredit a conservative person.
Yeah, their idea of a soundbite is name calling.
Yeah.
And we get back to the comments that Trump was making about putting a wall up at the border. And just as you mentioned earlier, he was really talking about we really don't want to have the drug cartels moving across the border and setting up business in the United States. We don't want the criminal element coming into the United States. Like you said, they need to be vetted. But where does it come down? He's a racist, he's a
racist.
bigot.
Yeah.
They come down to some very short soundbite that is calling names, definitely not politically correct. And you could have an intelligent conversation over, well, how significant are these criminal elements that live in this border area on the Mexican side? It's a replay of Pancho Villa to some extent, where he used to attack across the border every so often. Well, yeah, they're nasty. They're a problem. How big a problem are they? That's an intelligent conversation. But to say, well, he's against all Mexicans, do you realize that there are more cars shipped into this country from Mexico than any place else in the world? They're a major manufacturing source for the United States.
Well, I think the interesting thing about the media is when the campaigns first started out, nobody even noticed Donald Trump all that much, other than he was a rich businessman. Oh, yeah, he's going to be in it, and then he'll get bored with it, or, people will not vote for him, and he'll be gone. And they kept telling themselves this for months and months and months. Well, now the reality has hit them. He's in it for the long haul, and he's doing well, and he may very well be the nominee.
Yeah.
And they don't know what to do. So they revert to, as you said, name calling, race baiting, and violence in order to
now
knock
they
him
get
out.
really desperate by setting up these protests.
Yes, yeah,
And you got MoveOn.org, and then you got Black Lives Matter.
yep.
Now, let me ask you this. Do Black Lives Matter or do all lives matter?
Oh, you can't say that.
That's not
I mean,
politically
that's not
correct.
politically correct.
well, which is another reason why Trump is doing well, because he's not
He's not.
politically
No,
correct,
that's right.
and people are tired of the bull.
Yeah,
But all lives matter.
of course
Yeah.
they do.
And to me, and my liberal friends are gonna probably hang me on this, but Black Lives Matter is a racist statement.
It is.
Yeah, of course.
It's absolutely a racist statement. And, you know, all lives matter. It just, I don't understand how they could think any other way.
Well, it comes down to the fact, I think I've mentioned it before, if you're living in the low rent district, I don't care whether you're sky blue pink with purple polka dots, you're going to get an awful lot of police attention because the crime rate in the low rent district is higher than any place else. That's where the cops go. And the people there, yeah, they get a rough deal. And I think I mentioned before, Matt Taibbi wrote a very good book describing what it's like. And he documents in his book not only blacks, but Hispanics, but just about any race, ethnic group, whatever you want to call them, that's in that low rent district, they're going to get a lot of attention. And do cops make mistakes? Sure. We're seeing a lot of it, and to some extent, the Black Lives Matter and some of this other stuff is starting to highlight some of it. But it's too narrowly focused, and they ought to be a broader focus that, okay, we need to take a serious look at the police force. Are they doing a good job? And we don't need the Attorney General saying, we're going to prosecute everybody who is a denier of global warming. You know, I mean, the focus is totally off
Well,
balance.
the focus is not only off balance, but 99% of the cops, or more, or even a higher percentage of the cops, are good, honest people trying to do their job.
And it's a tough job.
It's a tough job, and they do some heroic things every day. Those, of course, are not mentioned by the mainstream media.
Oh, no.
But you have to look at other things as well. You were right that, you know, the low rent district has a higher crime rate. But have you noticed, have there ever been any riots from the Asian communities? And the answer is no. You know why? Their philosophy is, you come to this country, you get educated, and you get a job. And some of the, you know, quote unquote, Black Lives people will say, you can tell the difference because of our skin color. Well, you can tell when someone's an Asian too. But their philosophy is get educated and get a job. If the black community, instead of rioting or instead of complaining all the time, went to school, got an education, and got a job, there'd be no, I mean, racism now is not what it was a number of years ago.
No.
But the racism would go down if people would be, you know, well, let's say this. Our jails are filled with black people in them. No question about it.
No, a
But
good
who commits the
majority are.
crime?
Yeah, a good majority are.
Who commits the crimes?
Well,
Well,
now
you-
you're back to the problem with the low rent district.
But that's because they did not get educated.
And
Well,
And they could.
you look at prominent black people who have risen to the top. You know, you have an economist like Sowell. You have the President of the United States, for better or worse, he made it. And you have people like Condoleezza Rice. You have numerous black people that have done very well, and they know what's going on.
Ben
and they
Carson's-
speak Ben Carson,
Carson's well.
and they
But-
speak out against it. They know.
Right, but we have a Democratic proposal in Massachusetts, a Democratic program called METCO,
yeah,
Yeah.
okay? Now, METCO, from my perspective, is a racist program. Because what it's doing is it's taking some selected minorities in Boston and bringing them to other schools in the suburbs to get educated. From my perspective, shouldn't all the kids get a chance to get a good education? So why not take that millions and millions of dollars that we're using to bus kids from the inner city to some of these suburbs and improve the schools in the inner city and give every kid a
Absolutely.
break.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
for me, Metco ought to be eliminated. It's a racist group. It's the Democrats saying, we're going to help you, but we're not really helping you because we're not giving everybody a chance.
Well, they're
Well-
looking for a soundbite. Look at all these
Yeah.
kids we did so much for, but they ignore all the other ones over there and the ones that are over here.
Yeah.
They're left out of the game.
Well, it's like affirmative action. When it first came into being, it was probably a good thing. But as time went on, it became not so good a thing because it was awarding people jobs not on merit. The standards were lowered. That doesn't do anybody any good.
I used to talk, my father-in-law was a liberal. And I said to him one time, if you're sick and you've got to go to the doctor, who do you want, an affirmative action doctor or a doctor that got there the right way?
Right. Well, we have about 2 more minutes to go, so we need to kind of wrap up the conversation.
Don't we have about 4 other topics to talk about?
I think we have a lot more than that. So maybe we could each take 30 seconds to kind of wrap it up. You want to start, George?
Well, basically, I get very upset with the media, the way they portray things. They don't want to get into anything in any depth at all, and everything's got to be down to a soundbite. And they pick the worst possible sound bites imaginable. We'll call somebody a name
Yep.
and let it go at that.
Right.
And that's supposed to explain everything.
And I get cranky with liberals who tell me that my research and my sources are no good, but their sources are right, and therefore I'm the idiot.
Aren't there sources left?
Okay, let me rephrase that. Correct. and you know, they're correct, I'm wrong, because their sources are better than my sources, because their sources say what they want. And frankly, that's a bunch of bull.
Okay. I look forward to the primaries tonight. We know our show will not be aired for another week, so by the time you see our show, you'll know the results. But I just hope that the primaries go well, and I hope that the candidates, if they don't do well, will have the common sense to fall by the wayside. Because they're already running a general election in some of the comments that they have. So we look forward to seeing you the next time, and thank you for watching our show. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have enjoyed doing it. Good night.